Hey, everybody. I want to talk about professional communication principles, what we can enact. So, the first part is an acronym, and it's cheesy, but it works. P stands for purpose, and it's the why that you need to communicate, significance, not just the functionality of the piece or what it is. And there's a great story that goes along with this. Simon Sinek, very famous for his TED talk he gave on this topic, had this great example. And he said that in Microsoft, way back in the day, he was at a conference giving a presentation for them, and they were bragging, he said, about this great product they had that could hold 10,000 songs and fit in your pocket. He goes to another convention, so it happens to be by this company named Apple, and they're not talking about necessarily all the songs or the technicalities of that little pocket rocket. We're talking about how it's going to empower people, how it's going to allow them to have a certain listening experience, and for the idea of how their products in general would help educators advance their work. And we all know the rest is history with the iPod. The idea that significance, purpose is what counts, right? The second here is application. And I couldn't come up with a great word for this, but it's the idea of knowing that your particular piece of communication might have reverberations beyond just that local audience that you're thinking about. Some of these slides do bleed slightly into each other. We'll get to another that implies audience, but this one's just thinking very strategically, thinking about a localized audience, but also the possibility of it being picked up by others. So the example here would be you working at a satellite office for a corporation. And that satellite office has its own department, so perhaps the communication is internal, but perhaps it CC's up, or perhaps there are other people that view it in that satellite office. Perhaps too, it might be bumped all the way up and be viewed at corporate headquarters. So knowing the application, knowing the audience is always key to keep in mind, knowing that sometimes a piece could be bumped up even outside of your particular indication, right? You might not even intended it, but it might be used by a boss or someone else for that. And you should think about it before you actually write it and disperse that particular document. So another aspect of this isn't just about audience, but it's just about thinking about the material itself within the piece that you're writing. How do terms or acronyms that others might not know, say in a global setting, need to be spelled out for that global document or that dissemination, where internally we all know what PWI means or CCR. I was joking with a friend about that's my title at SU is professional writing instructor, PWI, but who knows that, right? All right, our realized relationships. This is the heart of all good professional communication. It's the idea that you start understanding not only are you literally working with your colleagues, but you're promoting or not promoting a sense of relationship with your client and your colleagues. It's the idea that sometimes you even realize the ramifications of different kinds of relationships that might be going on. I'll give you an example. I did a dissertation on the honeybee colony collapse disorder, a crisis, and it's been going on. I say crisis in quote marks. It's been managed, but it's been going on for over 10 years, where we lose a third of our honeybees in America every year. And so I looked at stakeholders and I looked at, okay, how are people communicating or not communicating? USDA, EPA, major corporations that produce pesticides that might affect the bees, nonprofit agencies and the beekeepers themselves and the bees. And that's often what happens is I said that, and I said it on purpose because sometimes we'll forget a key stakeholder and we won't realize the relationship. So sometimes we want to think about, hey, what non-humans does this affect and what other groups might I not be thinking of, but that might be affected by whatever piece of communication I'm putting together. Work timing, this is a great one in terms of I think allowing us to expand our imagination. So we always think of time as deadline, the idea that just being meted out, it is unending, unrelenting, and we have to meet it, right? My hand kind of indicating the tick tock, right, of making sure that we got to hit what we got to meet that deadline. But alongside that, in other cultures, there's this idea of kairos. In the Greek culture, there's the two words here for time. One, of course, the deadline, chronos, but the other kairos means opportune time or apt time, the fullness of time even. Some even cultures that extended after this using the Greek would add God time. The idea that something so good, so morseled in the mouth, like a good piece of chocolate, that it is pretty divine, pretty good. It's just apt. So we can think about us closing a sale as a salesperson, knowing when to pick up that phone, when to make that email, when to make that proposal, when to make that move with financials and new ventures for a company. So timing and communication, so key. And the idea of these two kind of blending wonderfully together, weaving. We're hitting a deadline, we're hitting an apt moment, but we're hitting it with a sense of opportunity, understanding that that moment has been given. That's the right time to act, right time to speak, right time to write or release what we've written. The last is you. This is everything, because really at the end of the day, your document needs to be useful to your client, useful to your customer, useful to your audience, whoever that would be. The idea of enabling your client to be able to take action easily using design hierarchy. So the headers and the bullets and the topic sentences are so key because people need to be able to skim through. So and good examples of feasibility study. Oftentimes there's an executive abstract at the beginning. It's short, it's quick, it's made for the executive to get the idea, the gist, the conclusion, all in one nice compact statement, less than a page. And then for your tech folk, often they want to look at the end. I often bring in my brother-in-law, who is a state engineer with the USDA, and he says, yeah, first thing he's going to do when he inspects a site, say a solar panel is going up in a municipality, he looks at their spec sheets. That's exactly, I mean, in the reporting sheet, he looks at the spec sheet, right? He looks at the maps, looks at the graphs first, literally flipping down into them, because he wants to see the details of execution, the action, and his ability to get to those quickly is so important. All right, guys, I'm going to bail out of here and appreciate so much being able to have a little space here with you. And hopefully this was helpful.